All right, so former President Donald J. Trump has really been going through it recently. He's been slapped around with 4 different indictments over 91 charges, and now he gets this surprise. So here from the AP, judge rules that Donald Trump defrauded banks and insurers while building up his real estate empire. So I want to get into some of the details here because this entire case was a shit show from top to bottom, and honestly, some of the arguments that Trump was using in his defense were hilarious, and many other parts of this are pretty interesting as well. So let's just get into some of the details here from the AP. They say a judge ruled on Tuesday that Donald Trump committed fraud for years while building the real estate empire that catapulted him to fame and the White House, and he ordered some of the former president's companies to be removed from his control and dissolved. Okay, so I mean, obviously this is having to do with what I think was a pretty open secret. I mean, everybody has known this for a long time, that Donald Trump, being this sort of like sleazy New York businessman that he was known to be, would basically inflate his assets when he's trying to get loans, and would turn around and deflate his assets when he was actually having to pay taxes on them. And so it was a pretty simple equation, not exactly a difficult thing for any sort of prosecutor or judge to figure out and to prove. But getting into some more of the details here, they say Judge Arthur Engoron, ruling in a civil lawsuit, so not criminal, he's not going to get like thrown behind, jail bars for this, right? Brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James, found that Trump and his company deceived banks, insurers, and others by massively overvaluing his assets and exaggerating his net worth on paperwork used in making deals and securing loans. They say Engoron ordered that some of Trump's business licenses be rescinded as a punishment, making it difficult or impossible for them to do business in New York, and said that he would continue to have an independent monitor oversee Trump Organization operations. So I mean, obviously this is a big hit, both like in terms of his actual ability to do business in what has basically been the center of his business empire for the entirety of his adult life in New York City. And it's also going to be a big blow to his ego, because like the Trump Organization, his real estate assets that he has in New York and all of that stuff has been, one of his biggest bragging points, right? I mean, this is part of the reason why he's called himself a billionaire, is because of a lot of these inflated assets, right? So they continue. They say, if not successfully appealed, the order would strip Trump of his authority to make strategic and financial decisions over some of his key properties in the state. And a little bit more here, they say Engoron's ruling days before the start of a non-jury trial in James's lawsuit is the strongest repudiation yet of Trump's carefully coiffed image as a wealthy and shrewd real estate mogul turned political powerhouse. Beyond mere bragging about his riches, Trump, his company, and key executives repeatedly lied about them on his annual financial statements, reaping rewards such as favorable loan terms and lower insurance costs, Engoron found. Those tactics crossed the line and violated the law, the judge said, rejecting Trump's contention that a disclaimer on the financial statements absolved him of any wrongdoing. Okay, so here we get into some more of this. They say, in the defendant's world, rent-regulated apartments are worth the same as unregulated apartments. Restricted land is worth the same as unrestricted land. Restrictions can evaporate into thin air. A disclaimer by one party casting responsibility on another party exonerates the other party's lies, Engoron wrote in his 35-page ruling. That is in a fantasy world, not the real world, okay? They say Manhattan prosecutors had looked into bringing criminal charges over the same conduct, but declined to do so, leaving James to sue Trump and seek penalties that aim to disrupt his and his family's ability to do business. One other part that I just wanted to focus on here real quick, kind of tying into the same notion that, basically he's inflating assets and values depending on the different situation, right? One of his arguments that he made in court, I kid you not, was essentially just that he said that Saudi Arabians, right, people who he has financial ties to, business ties to, corrupt ties to, that he gave favors to throughout his presidency, that they would just buy any of his properties if he wanted them to for whatever price that he asked. Okay, that was one of his defenses for saying, oh, I wasn't inflating my asset because I could call up the Saudis and they would pay me that money, right? Okay, so here we get into some of that detail from the Washington Post. They say, in his ruling, New York Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engoron pointed to what he viewed as a particularly strained argument from Trump, yeah, to say the least, that the property values Trump inflated to increase his perceived net worth could be correct because someone might pay them. That's not how this works, buddy, okay? You don't just get to say, well, who knows, in some hypothetical, somebody might pay this ridiculously inflated price, maybe somebody, again, who I have, a financial inroad with because I did them favors with using my position and power as the president of the United States. That's not how this works. You don't just say, oh, somebody hypothetically maybe would pay this price. That's not how you calculate the value of any given asset. They say, he also seems to imply that the numbers cannot, by definition apparently, be inflated because he could find a buyer from Saudi Arabia to pay any price that he suggests, which is probably true on the one hand, but also, number one, not going to fly in an actual courtroom, like as if a judge is going to buy that argument, in his defense. But number two, you're just admitting that you are, egregiously corrupt in this kind of a circumstance by just saying, oh, well, I have some business partners in another country that, they'll pay whatever I ask them to. I mean, you're just admitting your corrupt ties to the government of Saudi Arabia. I mean, what are we really talking about here? Okay, so getting back to this article, a little bit more details on, some of the background on this. They say so this is the place that we were actually at here. They say Engoron's ruling, in a phase of the case known as a summary judgment, resolves the key claim in Letitia James' lawsuit, but several others remain. He'll decide on those claims and Letitia James's request for $250 million in penalties at a trial that's going to be starting on October 2nd, so just next week. And Trump's lawyers have asked an appeals court for a delay on that, because of course they have. Trump's lawyers, in their own summary judgment bid, had asked the judge to throw out the case, arguing that there wasn't any evidence that the public was harmed by Trump's actions. They also argued that many of the allegations in the lawsuit were barred by the statute of limitations. Engoron, noting that he had rejected those arguments, okay, this is just fucking absolutely amazing, okay, noting that he had rejected those arguments earlier in the case, equated them to the plot of the film Groundhog Day, which is, obviously a movie about, where this guy is having to relive the same day over and over and over again. He fined 5 defense lawyers $7,500 each as a punishment for engaging in repetitive, frivolous arguments, but denied James's request to sanction Trump and the other defense. Do you know how stupid your arguments have to be in a courtroom for the judge to not only dismiss those arguments, but to fine you for how stupid and repetitive your arguments have been? Okay, that's what we're talking about. This is Trump's legal team getting fined $7,500 each, okay, for making arguments that the judge had already dismissed. Amazing stuff here. They say Engoron found that Trump consistently overvalued Mar-a-Lago, his property down in Florida, inflating its value on one financial statement by as much as 2,300%. 2,300%. What is going on here? 2,300%? Okay, it's not as if you even doubled the value of the property. It's not as if you added a multiplier of 10. 2,300% inflated value. The judge also rebuked Trump for lying about the size of his Manhattan apartment. Trump claimed that his 3-story Trump Tower penthouse was nearly 3 times its actual size, valuing it at $327 million. Okay, so under his ruling, limited liability companies, so this is some of the consequences, that control some of Trump's key properties, such as 40 Wall Street, will be dissolved, and authority over how to run them handed over to a receiver, like a third party. Trump would lose his authority over whom to hire or fire, whom to rent office space to, and other key decisions. Just a massive blow to Trump here. And they finish off here. They say James's lawsuit is one of several legal headaches for Trump, so just a reminder of the other indictments he's facing. He has been indicted 4 times in the last 6 months. 4 times in 6 months, accused in Georgia and Washington, D.C. of plotting to overturn the 2020 election loss, in Florida of the hoarding of the classified documents, and in Manhattan for falsifying business records related to hush money that was paid on his behalf to, of course, the porn star Stormy Daniels. They say also the Trump Organization was convicted of tax fraud last year in an unrelated criminal case for helping executives dodge taxes on perks such as apartments and cars. The company was fined $1.6 million, and one executive, Trump's longtime finance chief, Alan Weisselberg, pleaded guilty and served 5 months in jail. And Letitia James's office previously sued Trump for misusing his charitable foundation to further his political and business interests. Trump was ordered to give $2 million to charity as a fine, while his own charity, the Trump Foundation was shut down. Okay, so I know the other day when we were talking about Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey and him receiving like cash that he stuffed in jackets and gold bars from, officials or business partners in, Egypt and from the government of Egypt, right? I know that I described that as cartoonishly corrupt. This takes it to like an entirely different level of cartoonishly corrupt, okay? I don't think there's ever been a person, I don't think there's ever been a politician, and all of our, political, class in this country is massively corrupt in numerous different ways, right? This is just on an entirely different scale, on an entirely different level. And these are just the things that he's been like charged with. These are the things that he has been legally found culpable for, right? Which doesn't even get into all of those other conversations about the $2 billion that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who he made, in charge of Middle Eastern foreign policy in his White House. That doesn't even get into the $2 billion that he got from the Saudis or the business deals that his daughter, Ivanka, was making with all of her business dealings while she was also influential in the White House. It doesn't get to his dealings with like the government of Oman and the Live Golf Tour. I mean, so many different examples that you could point to. And the most ironic part about all of this is like, listen, you want to have a critique of somebody like Joe Biden and say that Joe Biden is also massively corrupt? Sure, absolutely, 100%. The dude is a largely a stooge for corporate America, right? That's who financed his campaign. That's who's had a large sway of influence on his, his political agenda since he's taken office. His son, Hunter Biden, and all of his corruption and getting these bullshit jobs that he absolutely wasn't qualified for. I'm happy to have conversations about corruption with any of these people, including Joe Biden. But the most ironic part of this is that, like, it seems like the Republican Party, the right wing, the conservative major attack, the main attack that they're going for against Joe Biden is that he's corrupt, right? Is that his son, Hunter Biden, profited off of his dad Joe's name when he was the vice president. And it's like, sure, I'm perfectly willing to accept that critique. I've given that critique before. I just did it in this video, okay? But how is that going to be your main critique of Joe Biden when you are supporting Donald Trump, who's doing all of this shit? I mean, it's just like hypocrisy wouldn't even begin to describe what's going on here, right? We had some other details here that were pointed out by Midas Touch, specifically related to Mar-a-Lago, because his son, Eric, was going on Twitter right after this decision came down and was freaking out about this and saying that, Mar-a-Lago is actually worth significantly more than this judge was estimating, right? And so a little bit more on that. They say Donald Trump and his adult kids now claim that Mar-a-Lago is valued at up to $1.8 billion. Okay, and his statement that he gave on this, Eric, when he tweeted this out, the $1.8 billion, he basically just said, like, some people are speculating that it's worth this much. Who are the people that are speculating? I don't know. Probably him. Probably just pulled that number out of his ass, right? As if that's how, calculations like this actually work in the financial world, right? Okay, Mar-a-Lago, they valued it at $1.8 billion, but in 2020, just a couple of years ago, Trump appealed the tax appraiser's $26 million valuation, saying that it should be valued lower than that, lower than the $26 million, in order to lessen his tax burden. Okay, so I mean, should show you a little bit how serious they are. Now, of course, Donald Trump himself was not too happy about this, as well as, one of his lapdogs, this guy, Mark Levin. Wouldn't recommend watching his show unless, you find it entertaining. I think it's honestly entertaining with some of the batshit insane stuff that he says on an occasional basis, right? But he said here, characterizing Trump's statement in this entire case that was brought against him, unbelievable. America has never experienced this kind of Stalinism, right? Joe Biden, right? Okay, famously a Stalinist, right? Okay, that Trump is contending with. It's unconscionable, right? So Trump's actual statement here, let's read a little bit of this. He says, the widespread radical attack against me, my family, and supporters has now devolved to new un-American depths at the hands of a deranged New York State judge doing the bidding of a completely biased and corrupt prosecutor, Letitia James, who ran for office based on the Get Trump platform before even knowing anything about me. Okay, well, first of all, we did know about you. Everybody, had speculated and had, solid reason to believe that you were committing crimes exactly like this, inflating assets to get certain loans, deflating assets to pay less taxes, etc., etc. That was not exactly a secret, right? But even if Letitia James did run a campaign saying, I'm going to be the person who's going to go and try to prosecute Trump, okay, you can call it politically motivated all you want. I don't even give a shit if it's politically motivated. All I care about is, did you actually do the thing that you are being accused of doing? Does the evidence match up with the, crimes or the financial penalties that you are going to have to, answer for? And the the answer to this is absolutely yes, okay? Based on everything that we know about Donald Trump, everything that we have in terms of the actual evidence that this judge was bringing forward, that they're talking about in this case, the statements from Donald Trump and his family members themselves. I mean, it's pretty open and shut here. So again, I don't care if you call any prosecution political in nature. If they actually did the thing they're being accused of, that's all that matters, right? So he continues. Today's action is a refutation of my status as the leading candidate for the president of the United States, including with a substantial lead over Joe Biden. Okay, well, that's, contentional. We've had, different polling data says different things. Okay, sure, but it's about a coin toss at this point. It is a terrible reminder that the radical left Democrats, I wish the Democrats were radical left Democrats. They're not, but that's how he characterizes them, will stop at nothing in trying to prevent me and the American people from winning the 2024 presidential election. Regardless of party, we cannot let this happen in the United States of America. As my lead in the polls over Joe Biden continues to skyrocket, these corrupt and highly political prosecutors and judges are getting more and more desperate and dangerous. We are rapidly becoming a communist country, and my civil rights have been taken away from me. A communist country because what? Because Joe Biden or the people who happen to be Democrats in this country have led prosecutions against you. And by the way, I mean, it's not as if this is only, Democrats who are involved in these efforts. It's a lot of independents. It's a lot of Republicans that are also a part of this process. But I mean, again, their characterization of Democrats being communism should probably give you an indication that they have no fucking idea what the word communism even means, right? He says the New York State Attorney General went before a highly politicized Democrat judge who refused allowing the case to go to a commercial division where it belonged to simply rule, despite all of the evidence to the contrary, that I committed fraud, which is both ridiculous and untrue. Okay, and then he goes on to complain about the calculation that they made for the value of Mar-a-Lago and all of that stuff. Okay, so I mean, there you go. I'll link this down below if you want to go read the rest of it. And, we also had Mark Levin, who was adding on to his characterization here of Joe Biden and Democrats as Stalinists. He also had this funny little quip here. He said, isn't it amazing that, he never wins a case? Is it because he's just wrong all the time? And the answer to that, Mark, would be yes, he is wrong and guilty all the time. It's really not that complicated. I mean, listen, we're going to have to see how a lot of these other cases play out. Maybe he's found guilty, maybe he's not found guilty. With the, classified documents, again, seems like a pretty open and shut case with the whole committing fraud to try to, keep himself in power and overturn the results of a legitimate election. Again, not exactly a secret. The man is still to this day not admitting that he lost the election. And, that's not even about him just claiming that he won the election or anything like that. He's perfectly capable of saying that. The judge outlined that in that case down in Georgia specifically, or Jack Smith said that as well, that, he has every right to say that he won the election, but it's an entirely different thing when you actually put together an organized strategy and try to implement it where you're just straight up committing fraud. You're trying to defraud the United States government by, submitting fake slates of electors and lying to people and trying to call up people on the phone to, find 11,000 votes and shit like that. That's where it actually becomes something criminal, right? So, I mean, again, we'll see how a lot of these cases play out. This one, as they noted there, was a civil case. So, potentially he's going to lose control over the entirety of his business dealings within New York, potentially barred from really even doing business at all in the entire state of New York, which is kind of hilarious given that that's where his base of operations was for so many decades, where he built up his image as this, famous New York powerful businessman and whatnot. So, that's the consequences he's going to have to face. And, things are just really stacking up for him. Now, on the other hand, you do have to look at the polling data and see that, this is also a guy who could legitimately be the next president of the United States. And there's some really interesting polling data that's been coming out, because you'll have on the one hand, an overwhelming majority of the American people say Trump is in no doubt guilty in their minds of a lot of these different things he's been accused of. But then they'll also turn around and it's like the polling data is 50-50 as to whether or not they would vote for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And it's kind of just a coin toss as to who's going to win. So, I mean, kind of gives you an indication in terms of how potentially weak Joe Biden is as a candidate, how weak Democrats are in their political strategy and their policies that they've been able to get done. Clearly, it's not even remotely enough if a guy like Donald Trump is even in the running, let alone potentially even the favorite for the next election. So, I'll keep you guys updated as we keep getting more information out of these cases, but things are not looking great for old Donnie.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying